You're at your first football game in 1975, hot dog in hand, when suddenly your calculus professor sprints across the field wearing nothing but a ski mask and absolute confidence. The crowd erupts. This wasn't vandalism. This was America having its most gloriously unhinged decade. Remember those bizarre trends that made zero sense but somehow became the heartbeat of an entire generation? The 1970s were on just about disco and bell-bottoms. They were about a collective national decision to throw logic out the window and embrace pure, concentrated chaos. But what nobody tells you about these wild times will blow your mind. There was a moment when streaking was on just a dare, was practically a cultural movement that swept across the nation like wildfire. People, usually men, decided that the best way to make their mark on public events was to run completely naked across fields, courts, and university quads. The weirdest part? Everyone expected it. You were unreally watching a football game unless somebody's cousin or that quiet math professor made a run for it mid-play. Security chased. People cheered. News anchors had to keep straight faces while reporting it. Streaker tackled near the end zone became an actual sentence on the nightly news. And then it happened at the Oscars. Some streakers wore masks. Others wore socks. Most wore nothing but grins and questionable life choices. The phenomenon hit its peak when someone streaked the Academy Awards and flashed the peace sign behind David Niven. You heard right, the freaking Oscars. Streaking wasn't about politics or protest. It was about chaos for chaos's sake. It was about being the weirdest kind of folk hero for exactly 10 seconds before security tackled you into the grass. Nobody knows why it started. Nobody remembers how it stopped. But for those few bizarre years, if you saw a crowd and someone getting wrestled to the ground with no pants on, it was just another Thursday. Speaking of things that made no sense but ruled our lives, mood wall posters were the emotional support animals of teenage bedrooms. You weren't a real teenager unless your wall screamed something profound like "hang in there." With a desperate cat clinging to a rope for dear life, sunsets, unicorns, space scenes with glowing planets, these posters were basically printed therapy sessions with glitter. Some featured waterfalls paired with phrases like "today is the first day of the rest of your life," as if that wisdom would somehow help you survive algebra class. They were mass-produced, cheaply laminated, and sold in bins next to lava lamps and incense at Spencer's Gifts. The messages were always vague but intense. You were 13 years old, had never paid a bill in your life, but apparently needed a poster to remind you to keep on trucking. And somehow, you did. But wait until you hear about the beds that tried to drown people. Waterbeds promised the future of sleep and delivered seasickness with a side of back pain. The sales pitch was seductive: a mattress filled with water that would perfectly contour to your body like floating on a cloud made of dreams. The reality? Slosh, sway, backache, and inevitable leaks. You'd climb in, and the bed kept moving. Roll over, and your partner got launched to the other side like they'd been hit by a gentle tsunami. Every waterbed had that distinctive vinyl smell, like a pool toy that got promoted to furniture. They were impossible to move, nearly impossible to fill, and entirely possible to explode at 3 a.m., turning your bedroom into a shallow pond. Some came with heaters because apparently nobody considered that sleeping on cold water might not be comfortable. And if waterbeds weren't weird enough, puka shell necklaces became your instant ticket to island cool, even if the closest beach was the kiddie pool in your backyard. These little white shell fragments, strung together like oceanic prayer beads, were worn by teenagers across the country who acted like they'd just returned from surfing in Hawaii. Never mind, they lived in Ohio. The puka shell didn't care about geography. You could have never seen the ocean and still pull off that beach vibe. They felt exotic, even though they were sold 3 feet from the orange Julius stand at the mall. You'd wear one to the skating rink and feel like a cast member from Hawaii Five-0. Even gym teachers wore them on field day, paired with tube socks and sandals. They snapped constantly. Those delicate shells weren't built for middle school hallways. Nobody cared. You've just bought another one. But the real linguistic invasion was about to begin. CB radio slang became the language everyone wanted to speak, even if they'd never seen a highway. Citizens band radios made trucker culture a full-blown national obsession. You didn't need an 18-wheeler. You just needed a handle. Everyone had one. Kids created call signs using crayons and notebook paper. Someone in every town claimed their dad talked to real truckers on Channel 19. Even Grandma had a handle, Grandma Goose, and used it while baking banana bread. People practiced their trucker drawl like it was a foreign language. If you didn't say 10 to 4 before hanging up the phone, were you even trying? Breaker 19, Good Buddy, and Bear in the Air became part of everyday conversation. It was like AOL screen names before AOL existed. Then Farrah Fawcett changed everything. Feathered hair was on just a hairstylet was a commitment that turned every bathroom in America into a chemical weapons testing facility. Everyone wanted those soft, perfectly sprayed waves flipping away from the face. And everyone tried. You teased, you curled, you basically transformed your bathroom into a low-grade hazmat zone. The hairspray cloud was so thick you could lose a sibling in the fog. Combs broke, mirrors fogged. You kept going anyway. You weren't just styling your hair, you were sculpting it. At least one kid in every family got grounded for using dad's entire can of mousse. The goal was volume. The result was often something that defied both gravity and common sense. And when you weren't destroying your hair, you were dancing. The hustle wasn't just a dance, it was a phenomenon that invaded every social gathering. Weddings, proms, block parties, roller rink sif. You heard those opening notes, you physically had to do it. You pointed, you spun, you clapped. You didn't need rhythm, just a basic understanding of the phrase, left foot now. People turned their living rooms into practice floors. Furniture pushed against the walls like they were preparing for battle. Even Grandpa tried it once and threw his back out. Nobody understood why it worked, but everyone agreed it did. The song literally told you how to do it. Do the hustle. And America listened. It was part disco, part conga line, and part martial arts demonstration, depending on who was leading. What mattered wasn't rhythm. What mattered was commitment. But the pranks were getting out of hand. Novelty ice cubes with bugs inside reached peak chaos in the 1970s. You'd drop one in your uncle's drink and wait. The plastic spider would slowly bob to the surface, and so would a blood-curdling scream. These were sold as hilarious gag items, but mostly just created trust issues with beverages. The bugs always looked disturbingly realistic, which made it 10 times worse. They floated in just the right way to catch your eye after your first sip. Siblings used them for psychological warfare all summer long. Some kids froze actual plastic roaches into homemade cubes for maximum terror. Meanwhile, lunchtime became a status competition. The Bionic Woman lunchbox was pure cafeteria currency. Kids slammed them on tables like badges of honor. It featured the show's logo, her face mid-action, and maybe a matching thermos that leaked if you breathed on it wrong, but it was still iconic. Every kid wanted one. The Bionic Woman could outrun cars, crush bad guys, and still look cooler than anything else on television. She was fast, fierce, and absolutely lunchbox worthy. You packed it with sandwiches, carrot sticks, and cookies, all protected under her super-powered likeness. But some trends were purely mathematical madness. Bayer-Hytham charts became astrology's math-obsessed cousin. You'd plot your emotional, intellectual, and physical highs and lows across wavy graphs that looked like lie detector results. People tracked them like their lives depended on it. I can't take the test today, my chart says I'm at a mental low. That was a real excuse people used. It showed up in magazines, lunchroom conversations, and office break rooms. You just needed your birth date and some time with a pencil. Fashion took a turn toward the synthetic. Pantsuits in the 1970s became the answer to every occasion. Church pantsuit, job interview. Pantsuit, backyard barbecue with Aunt Marlene and 3 uninvited neighbors. Pantsuit, It was the era of women dressing for power and comfort simultaneously, all wrapped in polyester that could stop bullets and hold wrinkles for decades. The fabric was always slightly too shiny. Colors were bold enough to blind someone across the room. Lapels were so huge you could land small aircraft on them. These suits came in every imaginable hue: avocado green, rust orange, baby blue, like someone had melted a crayon box onto a sewing machine. Cars got the fuzzy treatment too. Fuzzy steering wheel covers became part decoration, part thermal hazard. If you wanted your car to look groovy and feel like a teddy bear's paw, this was your moment. They came in neon pink, electric blue, lava lamp swirls, leopard print, or shag so long it looked like your steering wheel had grown hair. Installing one was like fitting bell-bottoms around a bagel, never smooth. In summer, they turned your hands into oven mitts. In winter, they froze into woolly rings of regret. But nothing said cool ride quite like gripping a puffball of questionable material that shed worse than a nervous dog. Comedy reached new levels of absurdity. The invisible dog leash was pure comedic gold wrapped in wire and confusion. It was a stiff wire shaped like an arch connected to an empty collar. That's it. That was the entire gimmick. You'd walk down the sidewalk holding this thing like you had an actual pet, and somehow people played along. Kids loved it. Adults fell for it. You were 10 years old, dragging air on a stick, and people would point, laugh, and sometimes even ask your dog's name. The wire had realistic springy tension that made it bounce like something was actually pulling against it. Footwear got philosophical. Earth shoes weren't designed for comfort, they were designed for alignment. With their negative heel technology, they sloped downward from toe to heel, making you walk like you'd just discovered gravity worked differently for you. The marketing claimed they were good for posture, digestion, and probably world peace. They were ugly, clunky, heavy, and beige, making your feet look like garden bricks. Yet people wore them everywhere. Health food stores, hiking trails, school pickup lines. Halloween became performance art. The Gong Show inspired the most bizarre Halloween costumes imaginable. If you don't remember, it was a talent show where being terrible was half the point. Contestants performed weird acts until judges literally banged a gong to cut them off. Naturally, people took inspiration from this chaos. Rubber chickens. Absolutely. Cheap wigs, obviously. Costumes made entirely of aluminum foil and glitter. You bet. The best costumes were DIY masterpieces that barely made sense but somehow worked perfectly. Bathrooms got a safety makeover. Bathtub stickers became cheerful defense mechanisms shaped like flowers, fish, turtles, or rainbows. Their job was keeping you from falling flat during your Saturday night scrub. Every house had them. They started as safety features and quickly became bathroom decor. You'd step into the tub and be greeted by 6 pastel daisies and a confused starfish. The adhesive wore down over time, but that didn't stop anyone. You just hoped the sticker that peeled off last week was on the one that had been saving you from disaster. Men's fashion took a bold turn. Shiny nylon short shorts for men weren't a suggestion, they were an epidemic. You saw them everywhere. Backyards, gyms, 4th of July barbecues. They were so short they could pass for belts if the wind blew wrong. Usually bright red or electric blue. Always uncomfortably tight. They squeaked when you walked, rode up when you sat down, and reflected sunlight like signal flares. Some had stripes on the sides. Others had waistbands that reached the rib cage. Dads wore them with tube socks and tank tops that said things like Grill King. Bedrooms became galaxies. Glow in the dark, everything was a marketing miracle. If it lit up after bedtime, it sold. Stars for your ceiling, shoelaces that pulsed like alien spaghetti, even underwear with glow trim. You weren't a real 1970s kid unless your room sparkled green at midnight. Ceiling stars were the big sellers. You'd stick them up with tape or glue dots, create your own constellations, and stare at them until you fell asleep. They barely stayed. Attached half would fall during the night and smack you in the face, but you kept adding more. Hair became a science experiment. The shaggy dog look for boys was less about fashion and more about survival. Boys let their hair grow long, wavy, and wild, usually past the ears, often over the eyes. You couldn't see the chalkboard, but you looked mysteriously cool. Hairbrushes became optional. Combs got lost in the chaos. Moms yelled. Teachers gave up. Your forehead became a distant memory. If you rode a bike, you were basically navigating traffic blindfolded. Even wallets got rebellious. Plastic wallet chains for kids became the ultimate fake rebellion. They clipped onto belt loops and dangled with pride. Even though your wallet held $2, a Chuck E. Cheese token, and a punch card for frozen yogurt, you still felt dangerous. These chains were bright, chunky, and impossible to ignore. Neon green, safety orange, some with glitter inside the links. You walked into school like a junior biker gang member, who also happened to like stickers and cartoons. Holidays got supersized. Kissing balls were what happened when mistletoe went corporate. These weren't dainty sprigs tied with ribbon. They were full-blown holiday orbs, often bowling ball-sized and covered in plastic holly, fake snow, and glitter so aggressive it stayed on your sweater until March. You'd hang one in the doorway, and suddenly every entrance became an event. Guests would pause under it like it was a toll booth for smooches. Grandma kissed the dog. Your uncle kissed the neighbor. Someone always made jokes about getting caught. Disguises got ridiculous. Fake mustaches from gumball machines were the height of low-fort transformation. You'd slide in a quarter, twist the knob, and out popped a tiny capsule holding your ticket to instant maturity or instant comedy. Inside was a fuzzy crescent with adhesive that barely clung to your lip. You'd stick it on, take one breath, and watch it fall into your soda. But for those brief 3 minutes when it stayed put, you were transformed into a movie villain, lounge singer, or very confused cowboy. Art went velvet. Velvet Elvis's paintings were peak 1970s wall art, and this isn't a joke. They were sold at gas stations, swap meets, flea markets, and truck stops. If you had an empty wall, there was a Velvet Elvis waiting to fill it. These masterpieces featured thick black backgrounds, neon blue suits, piercing white eyes that followed you around the room like the Mona Lisa if she de-headlined in Las Vegas. They glowed under black light and felt soft like your grandma's couch. Personal style became wearable. DIY t-shirt iron-A's let you tell the world exactly who you were, at least who you thought you were that week. You'd go to the store, pick a design from walls of options: Garfield, Snoopy, peace signs, or cartoon frogs saying, "Keep on trucking." Heat up the iron, no steam, apply even pressure. Wait, peel slowly. Pray, sometimes it came out perfect. Sometimes it was backwards. Often, it was off-center. But it was yours, a wrinkled masterpiece worn with pride. Decorations got melted. Plastic popcorn sculptures weren't food, but definitely looked edible at first glance. These wall hangings were made of melted, textured plastic pellets molded into shapes like Santa Claus. Easter bunnies, pumpkins, or cartoon turkeys. You'd hang them in windows, tape them to doors, or lean them against shelves where sunlight could catch them just right and make everything glow like radioactive candy. Every household had at least one, though some collected entire holiday sets. T-shirts became billboards. Weird t-shirts reached new levels of absurdity. "I'm with stupid" and a big arrow. "Disco sucks" in block letters. "Have a nice day" with a terrifying smiley face. These shirts weren't just clothes, they were statements that often made 0 sense, but somehow made people laugh. Some featured cartoon frogs drinking beer. Others had random phrases like "instant human," "just add coffee." The less sense it made, the more people wanted one. You could walk into a mall and emerge looking like a walking billboard for pure nonsense. Music became pure joy. Sunshine Pop was like opening windows in your soul and letting summer breezes flow through. It wasn't just music hit, it was concentrated happiness. Bright, bouncy, unreasonably optimistic, with harmonies that stacked like pancakes and melodies that sparkled like soda fizz. You might not remember every lyric, but you remember the feeling like anything was possible and everything would be okay. Even if you were 10 and your world was just the backyard and mom's burnt grilled cheese sandwiches, hair accessories got supersized. Giant scrunchies weren't just hair ties, they were fabric statements. Big, bold, often made of velvet or shiny satin, they wrapped around ponytails like fabric donuts. One was never enough. Some girls stacked them, others coordinated them with earrings, shirts, or shoelaces. They came in every color and pattern imaginable. Leopard print? Check. Neon green. Obviously, polka dots the size of your thumb. Why not? You could spot a scrunchie from across the school cafeteria. Doors became magic tricks. Pocket doors were like magic tricks you could walk through. Unlike regular swinging doors, they vanished into walls when opened, creating clean, modern looks without bulky doors breaking up spaces. You'd find them separating dining rooms from kitchens or closing off formal living rooms when company arrived. Over time, though, they became problems. Tracks jammed, rollers squeaked, and once one went off its rail, good luck fixing it without tearing open the wall. Bedrooms became shared adventures. Shared bedrooms among siblings meant privacy was myth and bedtime was adventure. 2, sometimes 3 kids in one-room bunk beds, fold-out couches, mattresses on floors. You learned to sleep through snoring, giggling, and whispered arguments over stolen blankets. But there was love there too. Late-night stories, secret jokes, flashlights under covers. You made sheet forts and built pillow walls, pretending they were rooms of your own. Winter survival became family events. Winter nights weren't cozy, they were strategic. If your house had one heater, and it usually did, it lived in the living room, and so did you. Forget bedrooms. Every night became family campouts on carpet. You'd drag blankets, pillows, and every couch cushion you could find, stacking them like survival gear. Someone always got the good corner near the heater. Someone always got stuck by the drafty window. Fashion became flammable. Leisure suits were everywhere, not just on disco floors. A grown man, chest hair gleaming under gold chains, sweating through double-knit polyester in full sunlight. This wasn't just fashion, it was a national movement. Most came in pastel shades like avocado green, mustard yellow, or burnt orange, making wearers look like couches from dentist waiting rooms. But if you owned one, you strutted like Travolta, even if you walked like Uncle Stan. Footwear became percussion. Clogs didn't just make fashion statements, they made noise. They clacked, they thudded, they echoed across school hallways and suburban sidewalks like someone had dropped a toolbox full of maracas. There was no sneaking around in clogs. But they were sturdy, comfortable if you got used to them, and felt weirdly rebellious. Like your feet were telling the world, yeah, I'm going to be loud about it. Furniture became blob-shaped. Beanbag chairs were anti-furniture. They didn't care about structure, design, or lumbar support. They just wanted you to plop down, sink in, and forget your bones existed. They came in colors that matched nothing: burnt orange, pea green, electric blue. You didn't sit on beanbags, you disappeared into them. For kids, they were thrones. For teens, nests. For adults, regrettable purchases they kept anyway. Fashion got footloops. Stirrup pants attempted to combine fashion with function, and did neither particularly well. These leggings had straps that looped under your feet, supposedly to keep them from riding up. In reality, they pulled awkwardly at ankles, made feet sweat, and caused socks to bunch weirdly. From the knees up, you looked like a school principal. From the knees down, you looked like a gymnast caught mid-warm-up. Windows became geometric puzzles. Glass block windows were chunky square panels that weren't quite clear and not quite frosted. making them perfect for light without clear views. Each block was thick, textured, and usually about 8 inches square. When stacked together, they looked like frozen waterfalls. Furniture became rescue missions. Furniture from thrift stores or curbside finds gave homes that mismatched charm only necessity could create. Sagging couches from garage sales, wobbly coffee tables rescued from sidewalks. Chairs with mismatched legs. This was what made living rooms feel lived in. You sprayed it down, wiped it twice, and made it yours. Some pieces were covered in throws to hide rips. Others leaned against walls to stay upright, but they had character. Ice cream became construction material. When you asked for ice cream, what you got came in cardboard bricks with the personality of frozen glue. It said vanilla on the label, but that was more suggestion than flavor. It was stiff, icy, and tasted like distant milk memories. You did unscoop it to sawed into it with butter knives and prayed it would soften before dinner ended. You could tap spoons on it like drumsticks. Toys became weapons. Clackers were 2 acrylic marbles the size of golf balls that kids were supposed to smack together as hard and fast as possible. What could go wrong? Everything, actually. These were the noisiest, most chaotic toys of the early 1970s, and every kid wanted them. The sound they made was somewhere between metronomes and airstrikes. Teachers hated them. Parents dreaded them. But to kids, they were cooler than lava lamps. Crafts became meditation. Latch hook rugs started with blank mesh canvases, plastic hooks, and tangles of brightly colored yarn that somehow always ended up in knots. But to kids or bored adults in the 1970s, they were more than crafts. They were challenges, hobbies, rainy day saviors. You'd stab that canvas like a warrior with a mission, creating shaggy masterpieces that hung on walls with pride. Beds became disasters. Waterbeds promised floating dreams and delivered seasickness with furniture. Every turn sent ripples across surfaces. You'd try to roll over and the whole bed sloshed like bathtubs during earthquakes. Getting in without making tidal waves was skill. Getting out without sliding to floors was Olympic-level achievement. Beauty became built-in. Built-in hairdryer chairs were the holy grail of home beauty, dome-shaped dryers fixed right into vanities or dressing tables. Sit down, flip a switch, and suddenly your head was enveloped in warm air humming. Housewives would sit under them while flipping through magazines, sipping coffee, or catching up on neighborhood gossip. Shopping became patience. Layaway plans were how families brought home things they couldn't afford all at once.